Hi guys, Maikeru here. This is my video on the Sanctum of Rebirth, the brand new boss dungeon released today. This video is also sponsored by Warthunder, more about that later though. There'll be timestamps and chapters for this video, so if you are looking for a specific part or a specific boss or whatever, you can skip to that part in the chapters. This dungeon is a lot like old school RuneScape raids in terms of Theatre of Blood. Theatre of Blood is just boss after boss after boss after boss. This is very similar. There is 3 bosses and you just fight them back to back to back. There is nothing in between, no monsters, no ads, nothing like Elite Dungeons. This is so much better. I've thoroughly been enjoying exploring this. Normal mode is fairly challenging, but there is some safety measures put in place to make it easier to learn. And then hard mode is insanely punishing and super fun as well. Today I'll mostly be covering normal mode, as I want to give a nice normal mode guide for anyone who wants to give it a try and wants to check out a guide first. There's also a lot of movement based mechanics which I really love. It allows the bladed dive and surge spells and stuff to really shine. The mechanics are also utilizing the square grid system that RuneScape runs on, and RuneScape has kind of tried to shy away from that a lot, and they're really embracing it here, and I love that so much. Overall, this dungeon is super good, and I'm super happy with it. It gets a thumbs up from me. When it comes to the useful unlocks and items that I would recommend for this, obviously in terms of a gear setup, just take your best gear. Any style works. You can use magic, range, melee, necromancy, whatever you want. I personally use necromancy as its skill set is the easiest to learn with in my opinion, but you can use whatever you have the best gear for. I would use the spell Darkness. It works with any style. Giving you that dodge chance can save you quite a lot of damage, especially if you mess up a prayer flick or something. Disruption Shield is also really good for nullifying some of the damage mechanics or as a panic button to save you from a certain scenario. Enhanced Excalibur is nice for some extra healing. A Blood Reaver is also very nice for some extra healing as a familiar. This one is super good for learning and something that I would recommend. Outburst of Vitality is another really good panic button, just like the Disruption Shield. Those things can come in super helpful to help you tank a mechanic if you mess up. Dive is super good here as an ability. There is a lot of movement in this dungeon, so having mobile perk alongside it will make it a lot easier as well, making it half the cooldown. The last thing I would recommend, which is really useful, is Blue Blubber Jellyfish and Expensive Spices. Expensive Spices just need to be in your inventory to work, and it gives you 50 more healing per chomp of a Blue Blubber, so they heal 800. And they don't take down your adren, so you can just spam them to your heart's content and get a load of healing without interrupting your DPS. The only things you need to play this dungeon is the quest called Necromancy and this little mini quest called Soul Searching. When you log in, it should have a teleport button and it will teleport you straight to the start of this quest. It's very short and very fun. Before we get into this, I will state that normal mode is 100% free deaths, so you don't ever have to pay a death cost while learning, which is really awesome. Another thing is you get a couple of free deaths within the dungeon. This is really nice when learning, as you don't instantly get kicked out of the fight after taking a 10k to the face. It will resurrect you and you'll be able to keep practicing, which is really awesome. I love this. Although I will note, when you do die, you lose all of your adren, you get a debuff where you deal less damage for a period of time, and you lose any buffs that you had, for example, necrosis stacks for necromancy and your souls. They all get lost on death. So dying still is very punishing, but not quite as punishing as pulling you out the instance, which is really good. It really helps with learning. But before we get into the actual guide of the video, this video is sponsored by Warthunder. Warthunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made and is available now for free on PC and consoles. Take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations. These range from the classic biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to the fighter jets and main battle tanks of today's age. I personally love the in-depth customization. Warthunder features a comprehensive customization system with countless camouflages, historical markings, and decorations for all types of vehicles. This includes some community-created ones. Immerse yourself in the intense combat of Warthunder, where amazingly detailed vehicles, realistic graphics, and authentic sounds put you right at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our time. Look out for the new Seek and Destroy update with the new Benelux aircraft joining France as a new line. There's new active radar homing missiles and detailed radar mechanics, alongside many more features with this major update of 2024. Join a worldwide community of over 70 million players in epic PvP battles today, and dive into the jaw-dropping experience that is Warthunder. With unmatched riches of high-quality content to explore and discover, there's simply no game better suited for fans of the military history. Play Warthunder for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox now by using my link in the pinned comment or in the video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms that includes multiple premium vehicles. And it even includes the exclusive vehicle decorator Eagle of Valor, alongside 100,000 Silver Lions and 7 days of premium account. It's available for a limited time only, so be quick and click that link in the description to get playing. Thank you so much to Warthunder for sponsoring today's video. When you get into the dungeon, the first boss you find looks a lot like the Leviathan from ED3, but the mechanics are a lot different, so let's dive into those. You want to prey range the entire time. You can soul split flick in between prey range if you are comfortable doing that. If not, just camp the protect from range and that is fine. He has a couple of mechanics that you want to be aware of. The first mechanic that happens throughout the entire fight is shards of moonstone marking your feet, and it tells you to prepare to move with this pop-up box. If you just move away, you'll see the tile have a little indication that it's about to get a hit, and then the moonstone shards land there with 7k HP. You can kind of just ignore them or kill it if you really want to. I just ignored them. For this phase transition, it will say that it channels power from the Sanctum towards the west or the east. Go to the side that it says, and there will be some detonate-looking markers on the floor. You want to stand inside those. If you stand inside it, it will say that it channeled 1 out of 3, then 2 out of 3, and then 3 out of 3. As long as you stand in 3 out of 3 of those, it will then have the boss come back in the middle. If you don't stand in those, it will then do another channel and you'll have to stand in them the second time. You can ignore the little spawns while doing this. They're just there to damage you a little bit. They don't actually have any factor into the boss HP, so I just ignored them. And sometimes attack them to get some stacks of necrosis or some souls, but that was about it. After you stood in 3 out of 3 of the redirecting of the channeling, the whole of that area will get a box, and then there'll be another box expanding inside that one. As soon as the second box completely expands, it does the mechanic, so that's like a little timer. All you gotta do is not be standing in there during this time. This is a very common thing throughout the whole dungeon. When you hit 200,000 HP, there will be another phase transition where you have to go to the opposite side you went to the first time and get 3 of those redirecting channels stood in as well. Then the last phase is just a DPS phase. You want to DPS as hard as you can. There is the normal mechanics that you have to watch out for and a couple of additional ones. He summons a scarab. This scarab needs to be stunned, so using any stun on this scarab will then make it vulnerable to damage and you can kill it. For example, for Necro, I used Soul Strike, and then that would then allow it to be attacked with another spell to kill it off. And then the final mechanic of this boss is a typeless big damage hit. You can tick perfect reso this, but it's kinda hard to get the timing down, so I probably would advise just doing something like a Power Burst of Vitality or a Reflect. That way you can negate some of the damage and not worry about your reso getting sniped. The second boss is a fun one. He fills up a lot of the area with those square boxes with another square box inside them. As soon as that square box fills up, it then uses the mechanic and hits you for 5k damage if you're standing in any of those squares. So again, easiest way to get out of it is to dive away, but if you have enough time and you're near the edge of a box, you can just run. He will do these throughout the entire fight. So just be ready to move periodically. He attacks with Mage, so pray Mage the whole time. Again, you can Soul Split Flick if you feel comfortable doing so. The first mechanic he does is he traps you in a prison of ice and stuns you. You want to freedom this as soon as possible and DPS the ice. I would advise having a decent hitting spell to get out of the ice. I would normally save either a Finger of Death or a Soul Volley to quickly kill the ice so I could get out. If you're standing inside the ice and you don't get out in time, you will take an 8k. So again, you can use a Power Burst of Vitality or something to tank the damage a bit easier. Going into Phase 2, the phase transition is that a pillar becomes attackable. When the pillar is attackable, if you're using Necromancy, this is a perfect time to split soul. This is a phase where you take barely any damage, so you can go ahead and get as much damage given out with your split soul as possible without having to tank any mechanics. The boss stops auto-attacking here, so soul splitting here is really, really nice, and obviously split soul on top of that for the extra damage is awesome. You can either heal back some of the damage you've taken, or deal extra damage with split soul. You do want to use some of your thresholds and such, because you do want to kill it as quickly as possible, as it continuously heals him. The boss then repeats similar mechanics. He will trap you in ice, he'll do the big squares around that you have to dive out of. Another mechanic that he does do is summon scarabs. When these scarabs come out, they only have 2,000 hit points. Again, these need to be killed with a stun. So just go ahead and use a soul strike on them, or whatever stun you have available if you're not using necromancy, and you just want to do that twice, because there is 2 scarabs. If you don't kill these, they will explode and do a very high amount of damage to you. Then at 200k HP going into phase 3, the other obelisk will be attackable now. Again, perfect time to split soul and DPS it down as fast as you can. Then it's rinse and repeat the same type of dodge mechanics and DPSing the boss down. The final boss here is pretty tricky, but very, very fun. There's quite a few mechanics here, so I'll break them all down. You want to protect from mage to start this fight, but every time the boss uses a mechanic, it changes its attack style, and it goes between mage and range. So after the first mechanic, you want to be praying range, then after the second mechanic, you go back to praying mage, and you keep alternating between the two. The first mechanic you'll see is big rectangular boxes this time that fill from one side to the other. When it completely fills, there will be a wave that comes from the same direction as it filled in. You just want to be not standing there and you will not get hit by the wave. So just make sure you're standing out of this before the wave comes over. After this first mechanic, as you can see, I start praying range as its attack style changed. The next mechanic is when she gives a voice line, something like prepare for death. She's going to be doing a giant magic hit on you. The best way to deal with this is to protect from mage and devotion, and it will completely nullify the damage. Although you can also resonance if you feel comfortable enough, because it will heal you from the damage that you take. But the main key thing for this mechanic is to pray mage, and then it will only ever hit you a 4 to 5k. The next mechanic is when she tells you to feel the power beneath your feet. She'll then mark a lot of the boss arena with squares. The first time this mechanic happens, there is quite a few free squares, and the further the fight gets on, the less squares are free. This is why the dive ability is so good to pinpoint dive to a empty square if you're far away. These squares will always be a 3x3 grid throughout the entire arena, so it is quite useful to stand on the border of one of these 3x3 grid squares, so that you can easily enter an empty space without having to run from the middle of this square. Also, these ground phases are quite nice as she doesn't use any auto attacks on you, so it is a free soul split phase. At 320k HP, the boss will summon 2 dogs. You want to stand in melee distance of one of the dogs and DPS it as quickly as possible with Protect from Melee up. It will do a mechanic where it will take your Protect from Melee down, so as soon as it does that, put your Protect from Melee back up, otherwise you'll take quite a lot of damage. You want to kill this first dog as quickly as possible because the other dog is powering up the boss while you're trying to kill this one. So the first one is the most important one to DPS down quick, because then the second one you can go stand next to and then the boss is not getting powered up at all. So even if the second one takes longer to kill, that is fine. You can tank that and the boss will not get powered up. Throughout this phase, you want to be dodging the attacks from the boss. Again, they'll be marked as rectangles on the ground. One of the attacks is the straight rectangles, same as phase 1, and then the other attack is like a giant star. Just don't be standing in any of these locations and you won't get hit by the mechanic. If you do, you will take like a 5k to the face. After the dogs are dead, she will pull you in to a different realm. When you're pulled into this realm, you want to protect from melee, as the gorillas on the side can hit pretty hard if you're close by. You want to quickly go over to the soul fragments and you want to release them by clicking it. When you do this, 2 minions will spawn that you want to AoE down. Best way to do that with Necromancy is to use Threads of Fate and do some type of big damaging move. You have 30 seconds to do this, otherwise you get insta-killed. When the minions are dead, you want to click the soul fragments they drop 3 of them. But while you're in this realm, you want to pay attention to the 2 symbols at the back. These 2 symbols are very important because as soon as you get out, you need to see which symbol is on the floor that wasn't in this realm and stand on top of it so you don't die. As you can see here, the 2 symbols I had was Krondis and Het. So I just remember these 2 symbols and look for the one that isn't here to stand on that one so I don't die. When I leave, there is a cat. That cat was not in that area, so I go run over to it and I take no damage by standing in it. It nullifies all of the damage. And on top of this, the boss gets stunned for a period of time, so you can go ahead and do a bunch of damage and get some free soul split in, which is really nice. It does one new mechanic in Phase 4 after you get out of the realm. It does square boxes that explode and expand out towards the edge of the arena every single time they hit. As you can see on screen, the easiest way to deal with this is to actually stand one away from the center one, and as soon as the center one explodes, just walk into the center, and then the rest expanding outwards will keep exploding and you'll be nowhere near them. This is the easiest way to deal with this, and it does it twice in a row, so just do this 2 times and that whole mechanic is dealt with. Super, super cool. One cool thing to note in Necromancy is if you do good DPS on this last phase, and you have Death Mark on the boss, which kills the boss at 30k HP, it will not pull you in a second time. If you don't have Death Mark on the boss, it actually gets so tanky at the end that it forces you to be pulled in one additional time, which then you have to deal with that mechanic all over again. But with Death Mark, you actually skip that mechanic. I don't know whether this is intended, but it's very, very overpowered, and another reason why Necromancy is very strong here. I definitely would advise a Death Mark in the boss to not get that second phase and trying to DPS down that last phase 4 as fast as possible. There is a lot of mechanics on all of these, and it does take a bit of getting used to. I died many times learning this, and even if you die, just get back in there and keep practicing, and you'll get it done for sure. If you want to get the achievement for talking to the cat at the end, you do need to bring in a cat speak amulet or a cramulet, and then speak to it to get that achievement for the elite tasks of the City of You can teleport out after the second boss to then come and get your cramulet for the third boss. I'm not going to do a full-blown guide on hard mode, but I will talk about it briefly, and I'll explain that hard mode is pretty much the exact same as normal mode on all of the bosses, except it is amplified and sped up significantly. The mechanics happen a lot quicker, especially the ones that fill up the floor with squares. Those squares fill super quickly and you need to instantly get out of them. If you're even just a tiny bit slow, you'll be taking a 5k to the face. It is a lot more punishing and a lot more movement heavy because of this. In addition to that, the mechanics and auto attacks obviously deal more damage in general. There's no resurrections like in normal mode, so it's also a lot more punishing when learning. I do like that the hard mode is just a lot more intense. It's very, very fun, and I am definitely enjoying exploring hard mode. I won't be doing a full guide on that right now, as it's only been out a day, not even that. But in the future, I probably will make one. It's very cool content, and Jagex have done absolutely amazing with this dungeon, both normal mode and hard mode, and all the intricacies that it has. I love bosses with a lot of mechanics, and this is delivered really well. It's better than just like a tank and spank boss, and I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. They have done raids proud. But that'll be it for today's video. Again, thank you to Warthunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to play it for free on PlayStation, PC, or Xbox by using my link in the pinned comment or the video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across all platforms, including multiple premium vehicles and other goodies. Available for a limited time only, so make sure not to miss it. And as always, until next time, see ya.